is the tax collector position, discussion and action. I'll take the lead on this, and I'll start with as much of a Reader's Digest version of the background as I possibly can, while still covering what the status of the situation is. We've known for some time now that the tax collector position, which had been previously an elected official, we had a town meeting a year or more ago, I forget exactly when it was, but it's been a while now, that the will of the public was that we transition both the town clerk position and the tax collector position from elected officials to become hired positions. And the thought process behind that was that those two departments are responsible for 99% of the revenue that's generated for the town of Beacon Falls. And as elected officials, the span of control and oversight that is allowed under the statutes by the Board of Selectmen is, to say it's limited is stretching the point. To say that it's fairly non-existent is pretty close to the reality, because the Board of Selectmen cannot take any kind of administrative or punitive or corrective action for an elected official. An elected official that is charged with malfeasance or something like that can only be removed statutorily through a process involving Superior Court. And we have had struggles with that from a management standpoint, saying how can the chief elected official and the other officials of a town that has to bring revenue in and then oversee all of the collection processes and all that, having no oversight of the officials who are responsible for that, seems intuitively counterproductive. So we made that argument at a town meeting, and it was passed overwhelmingly by the people of the town. It required legislative action from our legislative representatives up in Hartford, and that action was approved. So we have known that the current elected officials that are in the positions they're in right now are the last elected officials, and that when those election cycle periods were going to expire, that somebody was going to be hired into those positions from the point where the termination of the previous administrative period occurred. And in this case, for this elected official cycle, that is Monday, the 18th of November. The town clerk position is slightly different because it's a 4-year elected cycle, and it runs concurrently with the elected cycle for the presidential election period. So Mr. Green, who's our current town clerk, was elected in 2016. His term does not expire until November of 2020. So he's not impacted this calendar year or this election cycle year. But the tax collector position is. So we've known for a long time that Mary Anne Holloway was going to need to be replaced in some manner by the 18th of November. Therefore, we started this process back in August with our HR department, working to put together the advertisements, working to put together the job descriptions, because again, tax collector had never actually had a job description before. It's an elected official position, it was under the statutes, and so to create it as a job, like any other job on the municipal staff, required some administrative legwork to get everything ready. And we accomplished all of that. So we advertised that position in the newspaper and on a municipal job board, a tax collector specific job board through CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, which is the lobbying organization for all 169 municipalities here in the state. We went and broad blasted this in all of those locations. And we broadcasted it and advertised it in exactly the same places where we advertised the other two positions that we were talking about earlier tonight. The part-time town clerk position and the full-time assistant tax collector position. When we advertised for all three of these positions, The whole purpose for us in contracting with an HR firm was to take bias and perceptions of impropriety or partiality or whatever you want to call it, to take that out of the equation. We put that responsibility on the people that we hired to oversee this process for us. And when we started getting the applications back, we received a number. I don't have the exact number at hand, but it was a couple dozen applicants for both the assistant town clerk position and the assistant tax collector position. So HR, as we have asked them to do, they are the first line screeners of everybody that applies for a job. They determine who has the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to do that job properly. They winnow out the unqualified candidates. They do first line phone interviews with the surviving candidates from that pool, winnow it down to a group of semi-finalists, and then the responsible department heads receive the list and all of the applications and all of the resumes of all the semi-finalists. And we ask them to review them all themselves. Now, the town clerk is a little bit different because the town clerk actually has statutory authority to be able to select their own assistant town clerks. So we will be assisting Mr. Green with the interview process tomorrow night, but the ultimate decision for the hiring will come to him. And that's a special case. It's unlike basically any other position in town because the Board of Selectmen hires all the other positions in town, okay? So that's the process that we use for every vacancy. And as I said, we received a great number of responses for those other two positions. For the tax collector position, when we advertised it, we put a closing date of applications being sent in to us for consideration for this position of Friday, the 25th of October. Because the intention was to conduct that winnowing down process, to get the finalists, and to conduct interviews, and to make a selection for who the new tax collector is going to be last week, prior to the election cycle coming in. When I spoke with our HR firm on the 23rd of October, 2 days before the closing period, they advised me that we had one candidate, and that's our current tax collector. Discussing that situation with HR, we agreed that we were going to, that was something that we did not frankly expect. We expected that there would be a similar number of candidates applying for that position as had applied for all of the other ones. So we were in a little bit of a quandary as to what to do. So, discussing it with the CEO of the HR firm, we decided that we were going to extend the application period for an additional week. And they were going to blast it out again, like whatever they could do to like highlight it. There's a way of, like refreshing it to bring it to the top and that kind of thing. So trying to grab additional attention from potential qualified applicants for the job. And extend it until Friday, the 1st of November, giving it an additional 10 calendar days, give or take. On Friday, the 11th of November, I received word from HR that we had not received any additional candidates. So this position had been advertised statewide, across the board, for a good 5 weeks. And we received one qualified, and I want to stress that word. We received one qualified applicant for that job. HR's recommendation was that re-advertising that position would only delay the process and cause unnecessary and potentially damaging risk to the town of Beacon Falls. Because coming up on the cusp of when tax collecting season is coming, you need to have somebody in place. You need to have somebody who knows what they're doing and be ready to function on day one. We had one candidate. We had one qualified candidate. And if I may say, anybody who's had the opportunity to see our current tax collector at work for the past 6 years, it's indisputable that she is not only competent, but qualified. And in my editorial comment, because I have the floor for now, so I'm going to say this, in my humble opinion, is probably the best tax collector that this town has ever had. There's nobody who's more diligent in going after back taxes. For example, when we first took over this administration in November of 2013, there was approximately, and Mary Anne, make sure I'm getting the numbers correct, but there was approximately $2.8 million of back taxes on the roll. And it's important to remember that every year there are additional back taxes that come onto the rolls, because if you're collecting taxes in the current year at a 98% or higher success rate, which is what we've been historically doing, that means you're getting 2%, give or take, of additional back taxes being put onto what you have already. So it continues to refresh over time. You never actually drive it down to zero because new stuff is always coming to the surface. Mary Anne, can I ask you, because I know about what the number is, but can you tell us what the current back tax rate or back tax figure is for the town of Beacon Falls?
Well, I was told by finance on this next budget that's going to be done by the auditors, but it has to be confirmed by the auditors. But I was told by finance, it's last year it was 700 and something thousand. This year it's going to be about 666. So it went down another 100,000.
So let's round it up. Now let's say $700,000.
Yes.
Which means that just going back to the start, 6 years ago, she's reduced it by 75%, just off the initial starting number, not counting what has been added to it every single year by the non-collection rate, the people who miss their payments on the semi-annual payments every single year. So do that math in your head and figure out approximately how much money Mary Anne has recouped for the town of Beacon Falls. And tell me why there's a good reason not to appoint the qualified candidate who has applied already for this position. Mr. Krasinski, you have the floor.
Wow. Well, I'll start where the same statement that I made earlier. I believe that this decision should be held off for the new administration to handle, based on the discussion points I had from earlier.
I've already refuted all those. Pete,
Secondly, sir, I'm still at the floor. Excuse me.
I thought you were finished.
I know you've got a sell job here. I understand what you're attempting to do. But I still have the floor.
What I'm attempting to do?
Yeah. So please. Secondly, we have never hired anyone in this community for a job without having an interview and having the HR department come in and make the pitch as to where we should be going. So I just think we are taking steps here without following protocol we've used in the past. So you know where I'm going with all this, but I will be voting no. I don't have to say it any more than that.
And what I'm telling you, as I said already, as I have explained, we have followed the same HR protocol that we have used for every hired position. The recommendation from HR was to move forward on this appointment.
And that's written down where and how come that hasn't been distributed?
I can get you part of it was a verbal discussion with Chris McInnes. I asked him to put something down. I got something from his assistant earlier today, but I want something from him. So I'm waiting to get it directly from him. Based on my conversations, based on my interactions as the chief elected official of this town, I am telling you that this is true. You can dispute it if you want to. Michael, feel free to do that. Pete, do you have anything to add?
Well, you pretty much covered everything with our current tax collector. In the last 6 years, you did a phenomenal job, and you know I will be voting for you. But to head to you, Michael, HR, if we've been following the emails and extending the time for more candidates to come, I mean, I know where you're going with this, and that's okay too. But I mean, how could you doubt Mary Anne Holloway's qualifications?
This has nothing to do with Mary Ann's
What's it have to do with
qualifications.
that?
It has to do with what I believe is procedure that we
Oh,
operate.
okay, well then
Okay?
that's,
I understand what she's done.
what, do you
There's no
think she's
question there.
qualified?
It's your prerogative to feel that way.
Yeah.
That's correct, and that's why I'm making my decision the way I'm making it, is that what I believe is the correct thing for us to be doing here as a Board of Selectmen, post-election, knowing there's a new administration coming in, and what we have done in the past, as I pointed out.
And as
So-
far as the new administration, I honor Mr. Gerard Smith's new appointment, congratulations, and I want to, as my last meeting as selectman, anything I can do and make a great transition, I'm always going to be here for the town of Beacon Falls. But this, I'm adamant on making sure, especially if there's no other candidates for this position, and we extended it, I mean, Chris is not making this stuff up. I get what you're saying, Mike, but I want a smooth transition. She did a phenomenal job, and I'm going to be endorsing Mary Anne Holloway to get this permanent position.
I have nothing further to add. At this time, I will entertain a motion that we make an offer of employment as the new hired tax collector for the town of Beacon Falls to Mary Anne Holloway.
I'll make that motion.
I will second. Any other discussion? If none, all those in favor? Aye. All opposed?
No.
That motion passes 2-1. Congratulations, Mary Anne.
Thank you very much.